Hello, hello. Good to see everybody trickling in. We're going to get started in about 2 minutes. While we're setting up, a super curious where everybody's tuning in from. If you can put in the chat, city, state, country, continent, just to see where everybody's at. And we'll get started in like 2 minutes. Okay, we got New York, we got Seattle. Currently a little half and half on East Coast, West Coast.
Yeah. Hey, Mario. Thank you for joining in. Hey, Ken, Vidhi, Brandon, Michelle. Thank you all so much. I've never met someone from Sherwood, Oregon. Wow.
Oregon's definitely a beautiful. Well, have you been to Oregon at all?
I actually have, yeah, just once for one day.
It's beautiful, beautiful state.
Yeah, I remember I was in Seattle at this point, and we just took a one-day trip to go to this beach in Oregon because the water there was warmer than it was in Seattle, and we had just such a fun day, and we came back the same day. Awesome. Ken says the Sherwood, Oregon. Cool.
Okay. All right, we can jump in and get started. Super excited to hear more about what you're working on and take a look at how you've been using Notion, and most importantly, get a kind of a sneak peek into the Mind Like Water course and content. But I'll kind of hand over the floor to you, Sundari, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thanks so much, David. We met all the way back in March, I think, when I was posting about I need some collaborators for my course, and you commented, even though that didn't work out, I'm just so glad we kept in touch, and we're both working on our own creative projects right now. So my official name is Sandhya. Nickname is Pooja, which is what you probably see on the screen. So feel free to call me both. Currently, I'm an associate product manager at Salesforce, working out of San Francisco, California. I finished my master's at Columbia about 2 years ago. And really, I'm on this podcast because I passionately identify as a content creator. I've been writing blogs since 2015, since my undergrad, on topics ranging from productivity to personal experiences from life to psychology. I have published videos on YouTube. There was a phase when I used to publish a lot of videos. I don't do that right now. I published a book on higher education last year called Admitted. And I very recently launched my first online course, a cohort-based course called Mind Like Water, which is aimed at helping students set goals mindfully, externalize them into a trusted system, and build a very robust, personalized planning workflow in Notion. And yeah, let me know if you want me to go on or if that's good enough.
No, that's good. We'll definitely have time to jump into it. And, as you mentioned, like we connected, I think from a previous like GTD thing or conversation, and just from there kept in touch, and fascinated by like how you're using Notion and how you've set up the system that is really thoughtful and I think applicable to a lot of different industries and whether it's individuals or people who are managing teams. So super excited to jump into it. I'm just very quickly, I'm David Cespedes. I'm a Notion ambassador and also teach computer science at the high school level. I do Notion coaching through a site called the Notion Coach, and generally just like to geek out about productivity and mindfulness and minimalism, and just love kind of seeing how everybody works in different ways, and what are different approaches or potentially better approaches to work and approaching productivity. So with that said, just a couple notes. There's 2 questions in the poll section at the very bottom, just to get a sense of like your familiarity with Notion, And also, if you're interested in learning more about the course, so that Sundaria could, follow up, and there'll be a promo code that I think she'll be sharing a little bit later on. And also, if any questions come up, especially as Sundaria is like sharing a screen or a particular system, definitely feel free to drop the question either in the chat or in that ask a question space, just so that toward the end, we want to make sure to kind of get into those and, make sure we address any of those questions. So with that said, Sundari, I'd like to get a sense of like, when did you start using Notion? Like, how did that come about, and how, has your usage of it kind of evolved over time?
Yeah, absolutely. Also, I'm really liking the way you're saying my name. It's just so, it's so beautiful always when I hear it from someone who's not from India. So my journey into Notion, I think, began in February in 2019. I was working with a friend of mine, Rishabh, at this point, and he just mentioned this one day when we were working together on an idea back then. He mentioned that there is this tool called Notion that you should check out, which I think you'd like. So even before I began using Notion, I read this article which was published by Figma on their blog, because Notion founders used Figma to build Notion, to do a lot of their design permutations and combinations when they were building Notion. So Figma wrote this very long, detailed blog post on how Notion was on the brink of failure when they launched Notion 1.0 in 2015. And then they had to go back, spend another 2.5 years working in silos, just the two founders. And then they relaunched Notion 2.0 in 2018, and it just took off so well. So I read that blog post, and I read about how the founders spend so much time caring about every single element on the Notion page to make sure that every single button, every single feature click was tested multiple times with users, and it was optimized to the best possible way for the users to have a good experience. And so since I read that first and then began using Notion, I just had a better appreciation for the tool itself. So also, within the first few months of me using it and falling in love with it, like most people do, I reached out to the Notion headquarters at that point. I was then in Seattle and they were in San Francisco. And I reached out and I asked them, I'm going to be in SF in the next few weeks. Can I come visit you guys at your headquarters and write an article on you? And so they were very kind and they accepted. And I actually got to visit the Notion headquarters, which was so, so cool. Back then, they were a 20-person team, or maybe even lesser. And the office was designed so well. I remember walking in and seeing these two dogs running around, these two golden, not retrievers, but something else. And they're both blind dogs, which are owned by employees of Notion. And I noticed a portrait of Douglas Engelbart on one of the walls. And they were telling me about how they very intentionally handpicked all of the conference room tables and chairs in the office. So I actually got to meet Ivan as well at that point and interview him for the article. So anyways, that's kind of my beginning journey into Notion. And funnily enough, I currently live just 2 blocks away from their headquarters in San Francisco, which I didn't know until I moved in here.
That's awesome. Yeah, you gotta take another trip back there.
I know. So I don't even know if they're working in the office right now because it's all remote, but definitely looking forward to that.
Was it as organized as we would imagine, the office space?
When all I remember is I walk in and they have some open floor plan desks where engineers were working. And then upstairs, they had one conference room. But I just remember feeling it was very aesthetically pleasing and intentionally set up, just like Notion itself. So yeah, in that sense, it was. And so I've been using it for almost 2.5 years at this point, and I have experimented with using it for various use cases, ranging from using it for building a database for keeping track of the books I read, to building an extremely robust planning workflow, which I've been using for the past 1 year or so. But it wasn't until recently I took on the role of a teacher using Notion for building a syllabus for a course. And I'm happy to walk through that as well in this call.
Yeah, that was my next question. Like like jumping ahead, what was that transition like? Like, when did you start having an idea of creating this course, and just like how did that idea come about to get to this point where you're essentially launching and have it ready to go?
Yeah. So I wrote the very first sentence. I obsessively take notes and write, and I actually use Rome research for my journaling and personal knowledge management. I moved away from using Notion for that specific use case just because Rome is more powerful for that. But I still use Notion for all sorts of anything related to planning. So in my Rome database, in the page that's called Mind Like Water, the very first line that I wrote was on December 25th, 2020. So yeah, about 7 months ago at this point. And I just remember writing down, hey, I have this idea for a course. It could be called Bringing Order to Chaos. It was a different title back then. And I just wrote down something like, I want to create a course that brings in domains from, or brings in ideas and concepts from different domains like neuroscience, psychology, information science, to then help people bring order into their chaotic life using tools like Notion. Just that. I didn't really have anything more than that at that point. And honestly, for the next few months, it was kind of in an incubation stage where I would visit it every week and spend maybe 1 or 2 hours on it. And and then I remember doing a workshop on the course, which I think I told you about sometime in April, just for my roommates. And I got good feedback from that workshop. So then I had more motivation. And I heard about Maven from one of my friends. I just remember looking at Maven's website and thinking that this is actually a great platform to host a course. And they had this option that said, apply to be an instructor. And I remember I had 2 days before the deadline for applying when I saw that. And within those 2 days, I had to not just put out a form announcing launching my course, but also get 100 people to sign up. So I sat for 6, 7 hours straight one night and I created a type form for that, launched on all social media platforms, and thankfully, within 24 hours, got more than 100 people to show interest in taking the course, and then applied for Maven's program, and I got into that program. So Maven's program is essentially a course called How to Build a Cohort-Based Course, which we just had a graduation today. It's been going on for the past 6 weeks. And so Maven did an incredible job of teaching us everything that we needed to know in terms of building a course 0 to 1. And I understood the value of a cohort-based course before taking theirs, but after taking my first cohort-based course, I can actually see the power of it, because it's not just about watching videos; it's about live interaction, talking to a community, and getting feedback from a coach. It's so much more interactive, and there's a lot of accountability. So only in less than 5% of people who take MOOC courses actually finish it. And there's a good reason why. You're working in silos and learning in silos. And so this is incredibly helpful.
No, it looks like a great program, and just super exciting to see all of the energy and like investment and time that's being put into education, and like how to really rethink education as adults and as lifelong learners, and really just finding models that are more effective and more just kind of optimized for people's schedules, and the fact that we're maybe switching careers several times throughout the course of our careers, and really kind of adapting to that. And I know the founders have like a ton of experience in education, and that seems like it's a pretty awesome program.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be great to kind of like jump in and like just get a sense of how you're using it, and also as much as you could share without kind of like giving away the whole thing with the course. But
yeah. I would love to do that if I know how to share my screen.
Okay. Give me 1 second.
Oh, okay. It's actually pretty simple. I'm doing that right now.
Cool.
Tell me if you can see my screen.
Yes. Perfect.
Cool. All right. So to anyone watching this, if you have any questions on what me or David said so far, please feel free to put that in the chat box. This is the homepage for the course itself on Notion. This is where I built the course from scratch. It has everything from essentials to stuff related to project management, marketing, and of course the course content itself. And I'm still building the course. It's actually not built yet. So I guess I can just show a few pages because I noticed that looking at the polls of all the people here, about 40% are beginners and 50% are intermediate users of Notion. So for the sake of the beginners, um, Notion essentially, if you open a new page in Notion, all it has is actually nothing. If I just quickly open a new page here. So this is how a new page looks like, and there is really not much in it, which is the idea, because what Notion really does is it gives you Lego blocks, and then you can build whatever you want with that. So I used it for everything ranging from, there's a page called Key Questions where I wrote down key questions that I wanted to answer myself, like what does mind like water mean? What are the key learning takeaways from the course? Why am I qualified to teach this? And so on. So it can be used just as a document, or it can be used for project management. This is where me and my team of 2 people, my course assistant Ilan and marketer Dia, we spend our time planning for the week ahead and looking back on the week. So we use this to look at what got done last sprint, what projects do we want to spend energy on for the next week, and just what are the upcoming tasks that we have, as well as what does the next week look like. So this is a Kanban board that we use to look at an entire week in one glance to see what we have.
Awesome. Yeah, and I caught my name in there somewhere. I think it was like on Tuesday or Monday. So that was cool. And in terms of, getting, I feel like a lot of questions that come up in conversations is like, a lot of presentations or kind of walkthroughs of systems just have so much content and a combination of like project management and knowledge management, and links to, databases. So like, what was the process like, getting this set up? And especially, now that you have a team, like what was that process like? And, also if you kind of have like suggestions for people who are getting started.
Yeah, absolutely. Right now you see this page with all of these pages in it, but obviously when I began, there was nothing on this page. And I think the very first thing that I put on the page was actually the key questions, because when you're starting a project, it's so easy to lose momentum on an idea because we all have so many ideas during our days and very few of them reach fruition. So I've noticed from my own pattern of working on ideas that I need a framework to keep coming back to when I lose momentum on the idea. So that's why I just wrote down kind of a mission statement on why this course, why am I qualified to teach, what's the takeaway, and so on. And then I believe I didn't create the weekly retro planning, this entire project management until just a few weeks ago, because until then I could keep track of the tasks in my personal project management workflow. So one thing that is to note is that this is a project management page that I created specifically for the course because I'm collaborating with other people. But I have a much more robust planning workflow that which I'll be demoing soon. And so I kept the things that I'm doing in there for a while. And once I began hiring people and starting to work with other people, I realized that it's important to collaborate together on a single page. So we agreed that from the beginning we'll keep everything related to the course in this one page, and I'm just trying to think like the sequence of how it went from just creating key questions to what it is right now. So I remember things like course credentials began taking shape once we began using tools like Airtable, and we began using so we use Airtable, Stripe, Maven. So to keep track of all the credentials that we use, I created that page. And once we had to start marketing for the course, we first created ideas for marketing just to put down some free form ideas that came to mind, and then creating this page for a launch plan. So I cannot go into that because it has some confidential information, but
Sure.
the launch plan has we began thinking about, okay, when do we want to launch? Once we launch, what should be the sequence? Like, who do we launch to first? What about this the second group of people? What about the third tier? And so yeah, really, it's what you asked is such a great question, and I realize it's hard to answer that. It's so hard to go back to the mindset of starting from 0 to 1 when you're at 1 already.
Yeah, it's like that. It's like the expert bias of getting so in depth with course planning and understanding like building your expertise while also meeting students where they are in terms of either getting started in the tool or getting started with some implementing like systems or building certain habits. And it's super interesting in terms of like you're teaching a combination of how to use a tool, but probably more importantly, how to kind of make decisions that are going to positively affect like workflow or mindfulness, and do that kind of in a strategic way.
Yeah, exactly. And the course content, as you can see here, I have the title of the modules. So it's really very less about building. I mean, it's also about building the workflow, which is the main crux part of the course. But there's so many other modules I added. For example, one module is just on setting mindful goals. So here I'm actually getting a high performance coach to come give a lecture, guest lecture, and use some proven techniques to help people set goals that are not just all action oriented, but also balanced in all areas of their life. And there is a module on habits, procrastination, and experimentation. So I'm trying to make it as holistic as possible and not just be focused on Notion or GTD or any of that in isolation. I see some questions in the chat box. Do you think now's a good time to answer them?
Yeah, that was. I feel like Mario and I are on the same wavelength, just kind of getting into the tools specifically. But that question on Airtable and how you approach like integrating that data, if at all.
Yeah. So actually, Mario is someone that I know. So hey, Mario, thank you for joining this. Well, you asked 3 questions, and I'm saying, is it not hard to join a cohort-based course when you can start when the cohort is starting? I think you're asking about, is it not hard because they have a very rigid schedule. Unlike MOOCs, you have to start it on a specific date. So I personally, for me, the trade-off worked out very well because when the cohort began, I had the exact amount of time that I knew I could dedicate to it to do a good job. But you are right. Cohort-based courses are much more rigid. However, that's why they run more than one cohort a year. Most of the courses that I know, they run 3 to 4 cohorts a year. So every 3 months, you can start one. So in that way, it's more flexible. But um, yeah, as I said, I think it's absolutely worth it to, if you know you have the time to invest. It just the value that I saw in taking this was 10x of any MOOC that I've taken in the past.
Yeah, and that was actually one of my questions because I'm always interested in the decision-making process, both like in terms of the length of the course, the times that you're meeting, probably having students from all over the world, I'm assuming. And like, what was that process like making the decision to launch the course and have the course dates that you have? And I guess try to accommodate students coming from different places.
I think that so it is rigid, but it can be made flexible by offering a few options, which is what Maven did for us. So first of all, as I said, they run cohorts thrice a year, so you can join. If not now, maybe in the next cohort. Second, all the live sessions were recorded, so I could go watch it, and I actually couldn't attend 2 of the classes, so I just watched them later on. However, if you do that, you'll be missing out on the breakout sessions that happen during the live class. That's just something you have to be mindful of. And also, they have coaches who can work with you to give one-on-one feedback. So I was assigned 2 coaches, and I could schedule one-on-one calls with both of them every week and get feedback, which was super useful. There are things that can be done to make it more flexible and accommodate everyone's schedule. And for example, I'm having 25 students in my first cohort, and right now we've filled 17 or 18 spots. So I'm going to cap it at 25 anyway. And because it's such a small group, I can be very flexible in accommodating people's requests. If someone says that they cannot attend the live class, or if half of the people say they prefer this time for a live class and the other half says this other time, I could even think about doing 2 classes just because it's such a small room that I can spend more time one-on-one with people. I see a question.
That's a good point. No, that's a good point in terms of like the benefits of capping that number is, you do have probably more bandwidth than some of the kind of mega courses that maybe have like hundreds or like thousands of people, and exactly. Could be hard to, get on the same page and get that one-on-one time.
And so Homesick Mac, I'm not sure what the actual name is, but that's a cool name. So Homesick Mac says he has more of a recommendation. He says, did you guys hear of Float and Noggin? They give you a template where you put whatever course you've created in Notion. I actually don't know of them, but thank you for sharing that. I'm going to take note of that. Have you heard of them, David?
Yeah. I hadn't heard of Noggin before. Float, I did jump into a crowdcast a few weeks ago from Blake Imal, who created it, I think, with a partner. And Float's actually really cool. You can create your course content on Notion, and it creates an entirely new front end for students, and has some interesting tools on the student side to kind of track progress and track resources. I had signed up for like a super early like beta version of Float and played around with it when I was like thinking about courses, but definitely need to get back in there and check it out. But exciting that there's like all these new tools that are built on top of Notion, but also on top of other tools as well that are focused around learning and cohort-based courses.
Yeah, honestly, I cannot keep up, so I just gave up trying to keep up. Mario asked me to open a few pages, so I just wanted to open this one page and show that. I mean, if you go to the Notion templates gallery, there's so much inspiration to take from there. But as you can also see here, Notion is very flexible in the sense that you can move things around just like blocks on a screen, and it's just really easy to do that. I'm trying to think of another page that shows a different, like that's used for a different use case.
Well, it could be
just. I can show this one.
Yeah, and looking at Alicia's question, what is GTD? Kind of giving a quick primer on that, which is short for getting things done. But
yeah, I always refer back to this one diagram for GTD, which I think explains it really well. So I'm just gonna open that. So there's this person named Erlen Hamburg. He has this blog article called GTD in 15 minutes, and he does a great job of describing what GTD is. And there's a specific kind of a diagram that he's created. One second. Wow, it's really slow. Because I'm presenting and I'm connecting it to a second monitor, it's getting very slow. So I'm not sure if you've seen this before, Alicia, but this is actually just an easy way to capture what GTD means. So GTD, getting things done, is a project management workflow which was made popular by David Allen all the way back in the 1980s. He wrote a book on the same title, which is quite popular. Um, and I've read the book, and it's incredibly useful in one sense. Although, as we will talk more in this podcast, I have certain not problems, but certain features in GTD that I would change to adapt to the 21st century. I wouldn't use it exactly the way it was proposed, but the way it was proposed is as follows. David says that, number one, um, don't keep anything in your mind. In fact, one of his more famous quotes is, your mind is for having ideas, not holding them. And so that's why the first bucket you see here is called the in bucket, where essentially David says, take everything, like literally everything you have to do in your life, whether it be sending an email to your manager or launching a course, publishing a book, whatever it is, and then put it out there and start writing it down, and in one piece of paper, write down everything. And that's called the collect phase, which is the first phase. And second, you have to see if they're actionable. Because honestly, sometimes we have things to do which are just not actionable, or we just don't need to work on them right now. So he says if they're not actionable, then throw it away, incubate for later, or just keep them as reference. And if they are actionable, ask yourself, can you do that in less than 2 minutes? Like sending a 2-line email, you can. If you can, then do it right now. If you cannot, then add it to a bigger project. If it belongs to a bigger project, write down the next action for it and work on that right now, or add it to your calendar and put a reminder for yourself if it's, say, 3 weeks from now. So this really is GTD. Like there are 5 phases: collect, clarify, organize, engage, and reflect, or reflect and engage. So it's a very useful way of thinking about things, because ideally what David is trying to say is, your mind is for creative thinking and it's not for remembering things.
Yeah, that's spot on. I had never seen this illustration, but it like captures every aspect of GTD, which is pretty cool to see. I also didn't realize it came out so long ago, but the fact that he wrote it pre phones and before we use technology the way we do today, and so much of it carries over. And I know we've talked about how much influence GTD has had on like your systems and the course. But I'm kind of curious, because you've also mentioned that there's some things that didn't quite work for you, and you kind of rethought some of those systems and trying to kind of improve on those. If you can kind of like elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, I just saw Alicia's comment. I can't imagine trying to do that without technology. I know.
Same.
And I feel very similarly about Rome research as well, because just a quick side note, Alicia, there is a sociologist by the name of Nicholas Luhmann who used to actually write down his ideas on a 3x5 index card. And by the end of his life, I think he had 90,000 such cards. And he used to reference them and tag them and keep them in like a slip box. And he would manually go through all of the ideas and connect one to each other. Yeah, anyways, Rome research is an alternative for that, where you don't have to do most of the work that he did and just focus on writing down the ideas. So it's amazing how much technology can do.
For sure.
So now kind of diving into my workflow. So I am thinking how much detail to go into, because I also don't want to overwhelm people by showing too much. But think of it this way. It took me probably over 100 or 150 hours of iteration for this to get to where it is right now. In the beginning, like anything, it was just a blank page. And so with my course, what I'm trying to do is, in those 4 weeks, I'm trying to distill all of the insights to make sure that you can create something similar, not the same, but something similar in a matter of 20 hours. So when I say I think about GTD differently, the first thing that I do differently is I don't do things bottom up. I do things top down. So there is something called the life wheel. If you haven't heard of it, just go Google it. It's really just a wheel that has about 8 to 10 quadrants, and it has things like physical fitness, service to the community, relationships, purpose, and so on. Just the different areas of your life. And that's how I think about my life. I like using this garden metaphor, where I think of my life as three major circles, where it starts with just me. And this garden is all about personal happiness and growth. And it contains the trees that enrich my life specifically, such as mental and physical fitness, hobbies, traveling. RTB is just like maintenance things. The second circle I think of are the people around me. And here, the trees include family, relationship, friendships. I kind of combine relationships and friendships into one right now. Um, and then finally, the third circle is all about community and society and the world at large. And so here you would see trees like content creation. Admitted is my book, passion projects, and startup, which is something that I'm currently working on. So this is at the very, very, very high level. I think about my life as three gardens, and my goal essentially is to cultivate the trees in all of these gardens. And the trees then break down into branches, which are the projects that I work on. And the branches break down into leaves, which I think of as the daily tasks that I work on. So I'll pause there if you have any questions, David, or if anyone has.
Honestly, I'm just trying to rethink. I need a metaphor for my own systems now that is more inspiring than simply like task, project, area, because it does kind of set a very specific tone, and I think just kind of like personalizes those systems to make them, I don't know, to kind of give them like a different energy than just sort of like an input-output transaction almost between like you as a human and the technology. But I guess, you know, to dive into this a little bit more, how much of this gets implemented in the course? And well, yeah, just kind of starting there, like, does this become the framework for the course, or do you kind of start from scratch with everybody to build out their own individual systems?
Yeah, so you said so many great things. I just wanted to do a +1 on what you said about adding a visual, aesthetically pleasing element to tools that we use every day. Because, you know, you and I, we both love Notion and we love these tools, and they give us so much. And I think it just makes it nicer to add some elements to it to because right now I actually don't think of my tasks as tasks anymore. I just close my eyes and think of them as leaves on a tree. It just makes things more fun in life. So talking about the course, actually, I will just go through the rest of the databases here and then answer the question.
Yay, there's more.
Because I only want to do this because I want to show people that at the end of the day, all it comes down to is just databases. That's all. So I have gardens, and then I have trees, which are, you know, as I said, hobbies, traveling. And you can see the trees all have branches under them. So, for example, the hobbies tree has these branches where it's like become an intermediate pianist, or learning and creating notes on eclectic topics and so on. So then I have branches which relate to a tree, and the branches have leaves under them. And I have not shown the leaves here because if I show them, there are so many leaves under a branch that it'll take up the entire page. So I've hidden the leaves for now. So branches could be things like launch Mind Like Water. That's a branch for me. That's a project that I've been working on for a while. And nurture relationship with close friends and mentors. So one thing that I want to make clear is when people hear the word productivity, they think, oh, it's about squeezing the most out of your time. But I'm making it very clear in the course that my goal is not to make you a machine and make you have the most output possible. Rather, I want to make sure that you have a balanced view of life where you take everything into account, like things like talk to parents or nurture relationship with close friends, catching up with friends, meeting new friends, journaling, mental, physical fitness, exercise. So I look at every aspect of my life. So I don't just focus on work in the way work is defined. And so Alicia says, I'm so curious to see some leaves.
Same. I'm not gonna lie.
So some leaves are things like, I'm actually kind of scared to show the leaves because I don't know what I have in there.
Don't have
But
to go too in depth, but I think
hopefully nothing too
yeah.
deep. Published article on 15 things you learned. Right. So I've been writing an article for 6 months now. My birthday is coming up soon. I want to publish that. So so this actually is my in bucket, if you think of it. So if I go from all leaves to, oh, I don't have it here. But never mind. If I create a new view for this and just filter it out on things like, let me just do it here quickly. So if I filter this on, what I'm trying to show is the in bucket that GTD says. So for me, the in bucket is when the status is to do, essentially. Right. So you can see once I did status equals to do, it only shows the leaves that I have not worked on yet. So things like catch up with Vidya, who's a mentor of mine, or write an article on something, sign up for Vipassana meditation, and so on. So that's kind of the list of leaves. And finally, very important, if you ever create this on your own, please create a table called looking back, which is where you look back on the previous week and you write down comments on what went well, what could go better. Most people don't do this. They keep working on new things without looking back on what went well. So I actually have these columns which automatically calculate the amount of time I spent working on leaves related to me, related to the people bucket, Salesforce, which is the company I work at, and the world. So it's just really, it boils down to me trying to understand, how am I spending my time? Am I spending my time in a way that I want to? And what can I do better next week to spend my time in a better way that's more balanced, and also keep track of all of the goals that I care about? That's kind of so. So far, all I showed you was just the databases. Um, I'm going to pause here because I know I showed a lot before I go into the weekly planning routine.
No, I love that. And I think, a huge takeaway just from taking a look at all the way from the garden to leaves, it never quite feels overwhelming. And I think that's a big challenge, Notion users, but also just people tracking projects across work and personal areas, is when we put everything in one place, it could very easily kind of get overwhelming and in some cases make it harder to prioritize. So that was really cool, just applying a few filters and then just seeing a small handful of leaves that you want to kind of approach next.
Yeah, and I mean, Ken made such a great point. I'm just looking at the chat where Ken said, start small and build towards the more complex. Absolutely. I think that's why I'm always hesitant to show beginners something complex, because I know how it feels to see that and then never go back to it again, thinking that there's too much of a gap from where you are to where it seems like you have to be. So in the course, in fact, I'm not going to show my planner at all for the entire course until we get to maybe week 3 and everyone has begun building their own planners. And then I show them, okay, so this is how I use mine. And by that time, they would have gained enough expertise that it shouldn't be overwhelming, ideally, for them. But yeah, if I overwhelmed any of you, please know that it took 150 hours to get here. And but it doesn't have to take that much time. Like I just was experimenting a lot in my planner.
Yeah, with like some recent coaching sessions, I tend to recommend sketching out like just pen and paper. What are the things that you're trying to track? And in a lot of ways, because Notion is a blank canvas and you could customize the look and feel of it and use databases and filter them to show only the things that you want to see at a particular time. It very much is a user experience project in and of itself. And just making those decisions on where do you want to start, whether it's setting goals or, managing one project and kind of growing it over time. And maybe you just end up using it for one area of your life. But in my experience, it's like once people start, it just kind of blows up, and then you want to track everything because the learning curve, gets easier and easier to, design your own system.
Yeah, it's I read this book called Self-Tracking the Right Way recently. It's a very short book, and it gave me a lot of insight because I realize we're in an age where we track a lot of things using your Fitbit, Apple Watch, using tools like Notion. And so I have gone through phases as well where I have this obsessive need to track everything. And now I've realized that that's not the goal. Like the goal for tracking is not optimization. The goal for tracking is more so discovery and just discovering how you're spending your time. Are you okay with that? Do you want to change things in life? Just something to call out there. I see two more questions in the Q&A section. Avinash has asked, how much time do you usually spend journaling? Good question. I keep aside 90 minutes a week for journaling because I know it takes me that much time. It's kind of like in the beginning, I kept aside 60 minutes. And as the weeks went by, I could clearly see that I was spending more time journaling. So right now I just keep like 1.5 hours. And I also highly recommend using Roam for journaling. Like, although I do the planning in Notion, I do the actual like writing down ideas and journaling in Roam just because it's better for connecting different things. And great question from Alicia. Now that Notion has its own API, which they've launched, do you discuss the API Zapier connections? I did spend a day trying to figure out how to connect Notion with Google Calendar, because one of my biggest pain points right now is I have to time block in Google Calendar and then manually input that into my Notion leaves to see how much time I've spent on each task or each leaves. I don't mind it because I'm so used to doing it right now, but it would be awesome if an API can solve that problem. And so far, even with the Notion API, what I'm looking for is not possible, but many other things are possible. So I will be discussing that in one of the modules in the course. So the
That's so
tool
funny.
that I use,
Sorry, with the integrations, I had approached it the opposite of trying to move tasks with a certain time into calendar. But actually, I'll send you because I think I wrote an article on using Automate to send tasks, but it might work the inverse relatively easily. But yeah, just side note.
yeah, please do. If someone can solve my pain point there, I would be so grateful to them. And actually, a friend of mine did. He found a way to connect Notion to Clockify, which is a time tracking tool, where you just upload, but you have to use code for that. You have to run a Python code on your terminal, and it's not as simple as clicking a button. Anyways, I will. The only thing I wanted to show in this page was that in the previous page, I walked through just the databases, but the real power of Notion, the magic, happens when you start manipulating the same data in different ways. And you can do that using views, filters, sorts, rollups, and formulas. These 5 things, like these 5 features in Notion, views, filters, sorts, rollups, and formulas, they're the ones that to me provide all the magic that I need um, to plan my weeks. So, for example, I just changed this from a grid view into a Kanban view. So right now I can just see for this week the projects that I'm putting extreme energy into are this, and high energy into are this. That's all. Then I look at what leaves do I get to work on to make progress. So this table is filtered to only show me the leaves that are yet to be completed. So I've added the filter here. So I look at, okay, so these are all of the things that I want to do at some point in the future. It doesn't have to be right now. So I go through that every week as I'm planning my week. And once I'm done going through my planning process, which takes about 60 to 90 minutes, to be honest, but I really don't mind it because those 60 minutes or 90 minutes give me freedom to work on the next 80 hours in the week with a clear goal of what I'm working on every day and what needs to get done. So, for example, right now, this is how my weekly dashboard looks like for this week. And I separate out things that are daily and weekly recurring. Like I follow a morning night routine, which I just do every day. So it doesn't make sense for me to keep that in the other Kanban board. So I separate out things that I do daily or weekly from things that happen one off in a specific week.
So the weekdays are the same tags in both. You just have them filtered differently.
Exactly. So yeah, maybe with that, I'll stop sharing and answer any other questions that we have come up. So Alicia says, I hope I can be accepted into the cohort. Yeah, I would love for anyone who's watching this, if you want to be part of cohort 1, I'm keeping it, as I said, limited to 25 people. And we have about 7 spots left. And I also wanted to share a discount code for you all because you took time to attend this talk and listen to me. So, David, do you mind sharing that code in the chat?
Yes, definitely. 1 second. And then while I'm adding that in, I think a good question to close out with, that we sort of covered a little bit earlier, but if you had kind of recommendations or suggestions for people who are new to Notion, or even just new to, trying to implement their own systems, like what would you recommend in terms of getting started, and maybe some strategies that you found to be most helpful to implement new strategies and also kind of stick to them?
Just so I understand the question right, you're looking for strategies and not resources or any YouTube channels that people can follow, right? Just the strategy itself.
Yeah.
I've found that the tools that I use the most solve a big pain point for me. So there is this idea of a painkiller versus vitamin. And so when I found Notion, I was really looking for a tool where I could build databases specifically to keep track of things like the people I was reaching out to back then for a specific use case and the books that I'm reading. And I needed something to keep track of my traveling because I was doing quite a bit of traveling back then. So I wanted to create some page where I can keep track of traveling and also do journaling inside the page. So back then I used to do journaling in Notion. I've since then moved away. So I would say look at the things that you have the most frustrations with in your life right now, and then see if Notion can be a painkiller for that. Maybe it might not be, and that's okay. So I think people should focus at the beginning stages on what can solve my very frustrating problem that I'm facing, and then start experimenting to see what else can this tool do. Because I think if you in the beginning start looking at the tool as this shiny object and just out of curiosity, then eventually you're going to stop using it because it doesn't solve a big pain point for you. Rome, for example, solved a huge pain point for me in terms of connecting ideas because I was taking notes obsessively every day and writing down my ideas, but I had no way of connecting them. all the tools present only put things in categories and subcategories. But Rome had this new approach of not really putting things into buckets or tags, just
Hmm.
keeping things as is and start connecting them when you want to connect them.
Awesome. Yeah, I need to get back into Rome and play around with it. I know it's changed quite a bit since I used it last. And also, there's been a bunch of like great comments, like Esteban, making sure that we're optimizing for time, which is a great suggestion, and back to your point, Sundarya, on like not emphasizing working more or doing more, but really prioritizing and getting insight into the things that are active and the things that are happening in new ways, and like using these new tools to do that, which is super exciting, and definitely weren't around when David Allen wrote his book. So it's an exciting new era.
I know. So David Allen's book, even though he's done a good job of updating it, it still has many suggestions which are, to me, archaic. And he wrote this 30, 40 years ago, so it makes sense why. Which is why I've realized that GTD is awesome, especially for shallow work, like things that you have to get done maybe in 10, 15 minutes. But Cal Newport actually has a great blog post on this. He is the author of Deep Work, and it's a book that really helped me a lot when I read it. And he talks about how GTD is awesome for shallow work, but not very useful for deep work. So, and I agree with that. So that's why I've changed my planner a lot to accommodate for these new improvements. Like, how can I use it for deep work as well, on top of shallow work? So I see a question in the chat box that says, what's the average time we're expected to spend in Notion for somebody who enrolls in the course? So the course will have 2 live classes in a week. Each of them would be about 2 hours. And so aside from the live classes, I will be giving you relevant projects. It's not going to be an assignment that has no value to your life. I'm curating it so that you're working on things that all stack on top of each other. So I would think you would spend about, ideally, I want a student to spend 8 hours a week with me on the course, including live classes, working on assignments, taking part in the community. And anything over 8 hours is, I mean, it's like you're investing in yourself. So if you spend more time, then you'll get more out of it.
Yeah, definitely. And in terms of like the course details, you brought it up at the very beginning, but what would you say is like the big goal for what you want students to leave with after the course?
I'm tempted to say that I want people to leave with a mind like water, but that's not very clear. I think I want people to leave with a few things. Number one, I want them to leave with the conviction that brain is for creativity and critical thinking and not for remembering things. So I don't want people to ever have to put things in their brain and keep it there anymore. So that's one major behavior change that I want to see. Second, I really want people to live a balanced life. And I say this because, as a student at Columbia, battling through 10 different priorities at once, and even over the past 2 years, I've realized that it's so easy to get sucked up into a project and not and almost give up all of the other areas in your life and let them take a backseat, which it makes sense. Honestly, for the past 2 weeks, I've been sleeping pretty late because of building this course. But I am very aware of that, and I'm telling myself that this is only for the next week or so. After that, try to get some balance in life. So it's very hard to get balance when you don't have a system, a very trusted, objective system that's telling you how you're spending your weeks and months. So the second thing I want people to achieve in their life is this idea of balance in all areas they care about. And finally, I want them to use the workflow for planning. And I don't want anyone to build the thing that I've built, because this works the way my brain works. So I want everyone to build something that is optimized to the way their brain works. And I just want to help them build that in whatever capacity I can. So
yeah, that's the most fascinating part, I think, is just how to, and we've seen a lot more like Notion templates and systems that people are kind of publishing and sharing, and they can be super useful, especially for new users. But it's almost like we're moving from templates to like courses and training, and really diving deep on specific questions that, although they're using a specific tool, they kind of go a lot deeper and really get at the opportunity for individuals to kind of build their own systems, which I think is kind of the most exciting part.
Thank you so much. I know Alicia said she had some problem she says, I try to join and she just keeps trying to load the payment page. I'm so sorry, Alicia. Maven is a startup in itself. And so I guess they're still getting through some building process. So if you don't mind, reach out to me. I'm actually just going to put down 2 ways that people can reach out.
That would be great. Yeah.
So that's just the official email address, and that WhatsApp number I'm using it just for course specific communication. It is a WhatsApp number. It's not my phone number. So if you have WhatsApp, you can text me there directly. If you don't have WhatsApp, just email me or reach out to me directly on LinkedIn. And I would love to get on a call with you and figure out what's happening, because if it's happening with you, it's probably happening with other people as well. So thank you for bringing it to my notice.
Awesome. And I guess most importantly, the link to the course page, I believe it was in the description, but just in case people want to check it out. Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So David will send all of you an email after the call with the link to all of these things, so you don't have to actually take notes of any of this.
Definitely. Yeah. In case people are as excited as I am on looking at this stuff, but yeah, and looks like we covered like all of the questions and polls. So again, super excited to see like how it goes. I'm sure it's going to be amazing, and I'd love to do like almost like a follow-up, like lessons learned, and maybe between this cohort and the next, and just to kind of keep up and see how everything goes.
Thank you. This was great. This is the first time I'm talking about the course to an audience and not just to my team members or friends. So it's such a great experience for me to think about certain questions that I haven't thought about before. And honestly, huge thanks to everyone in the chat box. If it was just me and David talking, it would have been not as fun, honestly. So having you all interact throughout the past 1 hour was so great. Thank you so much, everyone.
Awesome. All right. So on that note, the video of this, I think should be available eventually, I think within the next day or so, using the same link. So if you ever need to kind of like go back in, or if there was any resources or links that you wanted to catch again or rewatch, that'll be available too. And yeah, as Sundarya mentioned, just send like a follow-up email with some of the resources and links to, so that everybody has them in case you're signing up for the course. Hopefully some of you do. And hope that was enjoyable.
Yeah, and have an awesome rest of the day. Bye.
Thank you. You too. See you, everybody.